The Texas frontier, 1867. A land where one wrong move meant death, and mercy was a word nobody remembered. Takakota had seen 30 winters, fought in more battles than he could count, and never once hesitated when duty called. But what he found bleeding in that sacred canyon would shatter everything he believed about honor, loyalty, and the price of truth. His hunting knife caught the last rays of sunlight as he stood over the dying woman. Blood pooled beneath her torn dress, darkening the red dust. She shouldn't be here. Nobody should be here. This was sacred ground, protected by laws older than memory, and the penalty for trespassing was absolute. No exceptions. No mercy. "Takakota!" Nalnish's voice echoed from the canyon rim above. "We ride before moonrise." The woman's eyes opened, dark as river stones, staring up at him without fear. Her lips moved, and when the words came out, Takakota's world tilted on its axis. "Kia promised me you would understand." Perfect Comanche. Impossible Comanche. The language rolled off her tongue like she'd spoken it since birth, but that wasn't what made his hand freeze on the knife handle. It was the name. Kia. His nephew. Missing for 3 years after a raid went wrong near the settlements. They'd searched for months, found nothing but his spirit horse covered in blood. The woman lifted a trembling hand to her throat. A leather cord. A small beaded pouch. Blue and white in the sacred spiral pattern his grandmother had taught him as a boy. The pattern only their family knew how to make. "Where did you get this?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. "He gave it to me when the sickness took him, said it would guide me home." "Takakota!" Nalnish again, sharper now. "The cavalry scouts will circle back." The woman closed her eyes. "Do what you must." Tribal law was absolute. No mercy for enemies. No exceptions for trespassers. He'd enforced that law 100 times, never questioned it once. But the medicine pouch changed everything. That pouch meant Kia had survived the raid. Survived long enough to give this woman something more precious than gold. Takakota stood and called up to his companions. "She is already dead. You are certain? The buzzards will clean these bones." Hoofbeats faded across the canyon rim. Dust settled back into silence. The woman opened her eyes again, confusion replacing resignation. "Can you sit?" She managed to pull herself upright against the canyon wall. Fresh blood stained her dress where the movement reopened wounds along her ribs. "You saved me." "I honored my nephew's memory." He lifted her carefully, feeling fever burn through her skin. Her body weighed no more than a child's. She'd been running on will alone for days, maybe weeks. The sacred cave lay hidden behind a curtain of stone and shadow. His grandmother had brought him here once when he was barely old enough to understand. The walls held paintings older than memory, handprints of the ancestors, symbols of power and protection. He laid her on a bed of soft sand and built a small fire. She watched him work, her eyes tracking every movement. "What is your name?" "Ayana." "Where did you learn our words?" "From Kia. We were caged together for 2 years." The fire crackled between them. Scars marked her wrists where chains had worn the skin raw. Her hands bore calluses from cotton fields and harder labor. Takakota felt something shift in his chest, a weight he didn't know how to name. "He died protecting you." "Yes." No elaboration, no tears, just simple truth spoken into firelight. Takakota removed supplies from his pack. Clean cloth for bandages. Healing herbs his grandmother had taught him to gather. Water from the sacred spring that never ran dry. "This will hurt. Everything hurts." He cleaned her wounds with careful hands. 3 deep cuts along her ribs. Infection had begun its work, but not beyond healing. She bore the pain without sound. Only the tightening around her eyes betrayed the cost. "Why did he give you the medicine pouch?" "He said it would find its way home when the time came." Takakota wound fresh bandages around her torso. The fever would break or it would take her. Either way, she would die in a place of power, rather than abandoned to scavengers. "The cavalry will search these canyons soon. Then you should leave me." "My nephew would have expected better." She studied his face in the firelight. You do not know what helping me will cost. Tell me. They are coming for your village in 3 days. I know when. I know how. The fire settled lower, casting longer shadows on the painted walls. Outside, night wind sang through the stone passages like voices of the dead. What price for this knowledge? Safe passage north to Cherokee lands. The offer hung between them like smoke. Impossible to grasp, impossible to ignore. Saving his people meant betraying every law that made him who he was, but letting them die to preserve his honor? That was a different kind of betrayal. Dawn brought questions with no easy answers. Ayana's fever had broken during the night, leaving her weak but clear-eyed. She watched Takakota prepare medicine from roots and bark, his movements precise as ritual. Tell me about the plantation. She sat straighter against the cave wall. They kept the children separate from the field hands, said young ones learned faster. Takakota ground dried leaves between stones. The paste would draw poison from infected wounds. How many children? 12 when I arrived, 6 when we escaped. The grinding stopped. He understood what the numbers meant without explanation. Kia was the strongest, protected the smaller ones from the overseer's attention. That sounds like him. Ayana touched the medicine pouch at her throat. He never stopped believing someone would come for him. The weight of that failure settled deeper into Takakota's bones. His nephew had died believing in rescue that never came. The information you carry, how did you come by it? The master's son liked to drink and boast, told his friends about the great campaign that would clear the territories once and for all. She recounted details with the precision of someone who'd survived by listening. Troop movements, supply routes, the exact timing of coordinated attacks across 300 miles of frontier. They plan to hit during the corn dance ceremony, when your warriors are scattered and the women and children gathered in one place. Takakota's hands stilled on the medicine bowl. The sacred ceremony happened in 2 days. His people would be vulnerable, celebrating the harvest while death rode toward them across the plains. You could warn them yourself. Your war chief would kill me before I spoke 10 words. Truth hung between them like smoke from the dying fire. No Comanche leader would trust intelligence from an outsider, especially one who looked like the enemy's property. Why should I trust you? Ayana pulled the dress away from her shoulder. Scars formed a pattern across her back. Not random marks of punishment, but deliberate cuts that spelled words in English. Property markings burned into flesh. Because I have nothing left to lose. Takakota studied the scars without flinching. They spoke of ownership rather than battle, a different kind of violation that made his stomach turn. The Cherokee lands are 2 weeks north through territory held by 3 different cavalry units. I know. My people would call me traitor for helping you. Your nephew called you honor. The words hit like arrows finding their mark. Takakota walked to the cave entrance. Morning light painted the canyon walls in shades of red and gold. Somewhere to the south, his village prepared for celebration while soldiers counted ammunition and sharpened sabers. If I agree to this bargain, you tell me everything. Routes, numbers, weapons, everything I know. And if you lie, then your people die and my journey north ends in failure. Neither of us wants that outcome. Takakota turned back to face her. Ayana met his gaze without wavering. She'd learned to read men's intentions in ways that meant survival. He saw that knowledge in her eyes, hard-earned and carefully guarded. We leave when the sun reaches its peak. The journey began in silence. Takakota had cached supplies in hidden spots throughout the territory. Preparation for long hunts that might last weeks. Ayana moved carefully but without complaint, her strength returning with each mile. They traveled ridgelines and avoided valleys where tracks would show in soft earth. Your brother suspects something. Takakota glanced back at her. Ayana rode his spare horse with natural ease, as if she'd been born to the saddle. What makes you say that? The way he watched you yesterday. I have seen that look before. Nalnish worries too much. Worry and suspicion wear different faces. The truth of her observations settled uneasily in Takakota's chest. His younger brother had always been cautious, but lately that caution had sharpened into something harder, more questioning. They stopped at midday beside a stream that carved through red rock. Ayana knelt to drink while Takakota watered the horses. The animals sensed tension in their riders, ears swiveling at sounds too faint for human hearing. "Tell me about Kia's last days." Ayana cupped water in her palms and let it run through her fingers. "He spoke of you often, said you taught him that courage was not the absence of fear." "What else?" "That honor meant protecting those who could not protect themselves." Thunder rumbled in the distance, though no clouds marked the sky. Ayana looked up sharply, her body tensing like a deer scenting wolves. "Riders." Takakota listened to the rhythm of hoofbeats carried on wind. Multiple horses moving fast, too fast for casual travel. "How many?" "4, maybe 5. They mounted quickly and rode toward higher ground. Behind them, dust rose in a column that spoke of pursuit rather than coincidence. Someone had found their trail despite careful attempts to hide it. Ayana urged her horse closer to his. "If they catch us, you do not know me." "That will not save either of us. It might save one." Takakota studied her face, seeing determination that had carried her through years of captivity and across hundreds of miles of hostile territory. She would die before bringing shame to someone who'd shown her kindness. "We ride together or not at all." The dust cloud grew larger, resolving into individual riders pushing their mounts hard across broken ground. Sunlight glinted off metal, weapons ready for use. Ayana pointed toward a gap in the rocks ahead. "There. We can lose them in the maze." They rode toward the narrow passage as thunder grew louder behind them. Not thunder, after all, but the sound of pursuit closing distance with every stride. The gap opened into a maze of stone corridors that twisted and branched like arteries through living rock. Takakota led them deeper into the labyrinth, following paths he'd learned as a boy hunting with his grandfather. But the riders behind them knew these passages too. The stone maze offered no sanctuary. Hoofbeats echoed off canyon walls, multiplying like thunder trapped in earthen chambers. Behind them, voices called out in English, military commands sharp as blade edges. "This way!" Ayana pointed toward a crack in the rock barely wide enough for horse and rider. "I know this place." They squeezed through the gap into a box canyon ringed by walls too steep for climbing. Ancient petroglyphs marked the stone like prayers carved by desperate hands. No way out except the way they'd entered. "We are trapped." Ayana dismounted and began gathering stones. "Not trapped. Positioned." Takakota understood. High ground. Limited approaches. A place where few could hold off many if they chose their shots carefully. The first rider appeared in the gap. Blue uniform marked him as cavalry. Behind him came 3 more soldiers, and a man in civilian clothes who moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "There she is." The civilian's voice carried across the canyon like a whip crack. "My property trying to play Indian. Captain Morrison." Ayana had described him in whispered fragments during their journey. Overseer turned bounty hunter. A man who collected human beings like others collected horses or cattle. "You have run far enough, girl." Takakota stepped in front of Ayana. His hand rested on his knife handle. The soldiers raised their rifles but didn't fire. Morrison wanted his prize alive. "This woman is under my protection." Morrison laughed. "Your protection means nothing here, boy. This is white man's territory now. Then you trespass on sacred ground." The bounty hunter studied Takakota with eyes that measured everything in terms of profit and loss. "Sacred to who?" "Your people are finished. Dead, or soon to be reservation Indians eating government beef." Ayana touched Takakota's shoulder. "Let me speak." "They will not listen." "They will listen to this." She stepped forward, chin raised. "Captain Morrison, still collecting rewards for other men's property. Still running from lawful authority, I see." Authority. The word tasted bitter on her tongue. "Is that what you call it when you brand children like cattle?" Morrison's smile never wavered. "The law, is the law. You belong to someone. I return you to where you belong. And if I refuse? Dead runaway slaves bring smaller rewards, but rewards nonetheless. The soldiers shifted position, forming a loose circle, professional movements that spoke of experience hunting human prey across hostile territory. Takakota counted ammunition pouches and noted how they held their weapons. Veterans all. You cannot take her. Morrison turned his attention back to Takakota. Cannot? Boy, I have taken hundreds just like her. What makes you think you can stop me? Thunder rolled across the canyon floor. Real thunder this time, promising storm clouds building beyond the rim. But beneath the natural sound, Takakota heard something else. More hoofbeats approaching the gap. 5 painted riders emerged from the narrow passage. Comanche warriors with weapons ready, and war paint fresh on their faces. Nalnish rode at their head, his expression carved from stone. Brother! Takakota felt the ground shift beneath his feet. His war party had found them. Found him protecting the woman he'd claimed was dead. Found him making bargains with enemies in sacred places. You lied to us. I protected what was mine to protect. Nalnish dismounted slowly. His hand remained on his tomahawk handle. She is not yours to protect. Morrison watched the exchange with growing interest. Seems your own people disagree with your choice, boy. The canyon had become a trap within a trap. Soldiers on one side, warriors on the other. Ayana caught between them like a spark surrounded by kindling. Nalnish! Takakota kept his voice steady. This woman carries Kia's medicine pouch. She honored our nephew when we could not. I see a runaway slave who speaks our words, nothing more. Then you see with blind eyes. The insult hung in the air like smoke from a signal fire. Warriors didn't question each other's vision lightly. Nalnish's grip tightened on his weapon. Careful, brother. You walk close to the edge. Morrison stepped forward, sensing opportunity in the growing tension. Perhaps we can reach an understanding here. You want the woman. I want the woman. One of us has legal claim. Legal claim? Ayana's voice cut across the canyon like wind through dry grass. Tell them about the legal claim, Captain. Tell them about the children. Morrison's confident smile faltered. You will be silent. Tell them how you bought Comanche children from raiders. How you kept them chained in the same pens as runaway slaves. Takakota felt the world tilt beneath his feet. Nalnish's expression shifted from anger to something harder, more dangerous. What? Children? Ayana looked directly at Nalnish. Your nephew among them. Kia. Branded and caged like an animal. Morrison's hand moved toward his pistol. Lying words from a lying mouth. Ask him. Ayana pointed at the bounty hunter. Ask him about the boy who died fighting to protect the others. Ask him about the scars on that boy's back. The warriors began moving. Subtle shifts in position that spoke of violence held in check by the thinnest of threads. Nalnish stepped closer to Morrison, his tomahawk now clear of its sheath. Is this true? Morrison drew his pistol with practiced speed. Step back, Indian. You have no authority here. The shot echoed off canyon walls like Judgment Day arriving early. Morrison crumpled to the ground, smoke rising from Nalnish's rifle barrel. The bounty hunter clutched his chest, blood spreading between his fingers. You killed him. One soldier raised his weapon toward Nalnish. He drew first. But Takakota saw the truth in his brother's eyes. Nalnish hadn't fired to save Morrison. He'd fired to silence the only witness to something larger, something that would destroy their family's honor if it became known. The soldiers looked uncertain now. Their leader lay dying, and they faced 5 armed warriors in an enclosed space. Bad odds for men trained to fight in open country. We ride out together. Nalnish addressed the soldiers directly. You take your dead, we take our business elsewhere. The runaway is no longer your concern. The soldiers exchanged glances. 4 against 5. No reinforcements coming. Their bounty hunter employer bleeding out in the dust. The mathematics of survival pointed toward retreat. They lifted Morrison onto a horse and rode back through the gap without another word. The canyon fell silent except for wind moving through stone passages and the distant rumble of approaching storm. Nalnish faced his brother across ground stained with blood. "Now we talk." Takakota looked at Ayana, seeing truth reflected in her eyes. Truth about Nalnish. Truth about why Morrison had to die. Truth about betrayals that ran deeper than anyone suspected. "Yes. Now we talk." Storm clouds gathered overhead, promising rain that would wash away blood, but not the memory of what had been spilled in this sacred place. Rain began to fall as Nalnish dismissed the other warriors. They rode away without questions, understanding that some conversations belonged only to blood. Thunder masked the sound of their departure, leaving 3 figures alone in the canyon where secrets had already claimed one life. Nalnish walked to where Morrison's blood darkened the sand. He knew too much. About the children? About arrangements that keep our people alive. Ayana stood silent beside the painted walls, watching brothers circle each other like wolves testing dominance. She'd seen this dance before, men choosing between loyalty and survival, while honor bled out in the space between them. What arrangements? Nalnish picked up a stone and threw it against the canyon wall. It shattered into fragments that scattered across the ground like broken promises. "The cavalry comes for our village tomorrow. Not in 3 days. Tomorrow." The words hit Takakota like physical blows. "You know this how?" "Because I told them when to come." Rain fell harder, turning dust to mud and washing Morrison's blood into patterns that resembled the ancient petroglyphs carved into stone. Takakota felt the ground shift beneath everything he'd believed about his brother, his family, his world. "You are the traitor she spoke of. I am the one trying to save what can be saved." Nalnish faced his brother directly. No shame in his expression, no apology in his stance. Just the rigid posture of a man who'd made choices that carved pieces from his soul. "Our people are dying, Takakota. Every raid brings fewer warriors home. Every winter claims more elders. Every spring sees our hunting grounds shrunk smaller. So you betray them to their enemies? I negotiate terms that let them live." The rain created a curtain of sound that isolated them from the wider world. Takakota studied his brother's face, seeing lines that hadn't been there a year ago, seeing weight that came from carrying secrets too heavy for one man's shoulders. "The reservation is better than extinction." Ayana stepped forward. "Your nephew would disagree." Nalnish turned toward her with eyes like winter storms. "My nephew died because he believed in victories that no longer exist. He died because men like Morrison bought and sold children like livestock. Morrison is dead. The system that created him remains." The truth hung between them like smoke from a dying fire. Morrison had been a symptom, not the disease. Killing him changed nothing about the forces reshaping the world around them. "The attack tomorrow." Takakota's voice carried the weight of approaching catastrophe. "How many will die?" "As few as possible if our people surrender quickly." "And if they fight?" Nalnish didn't answer. The silence spoke volumes about cavalry tactics and the price of resistance. Thunder rolled across the canyon, followed by lightning that illuminated the painted walls in stark detail. Ancient hands had marked this place with symbols of power and protection. Those hands belonged to people who'd also faced impossible choices between survival and honor. "We ride for the village." Takakota moved toward his horse. "Warn them. Give them the chance to decide their own fate. They will choose to fight. That is their right." Nalnish caught his brother's arm. "And when they are all dead, when our children lie bleeding in the dust, will you still call it honor?" Takakota pulled free of his brother's grip. "I will call it choice." The storm reached full fury as they rode from the canyon. Rain turned the world gray and formless, reducing visibility to mere yards. They followed game trails and dry creek beds, paths that would not hold their tracks once the water finished its work. The village lay 20 miles south, close enough to reach before dawn if they pushed hard, close enough for the cavalry to surround before anyone realized the danger. They rode in formation despite everything. Brothers despite betrayal. Warriors despite the futility of their cause. Behind them, Ayana kept pace without complaint. though Takakota could see exhaustion etching deeper lines around her eyes. The rain stopped near midnight. Stars emerged through breaking clouds like scattered diamonds on black silk. The sudden quiet felt ominous after hours of thunder and drumming water. There, Nalnish pointed toward distant firelight flickering between cottonwood trees. The camp. But something was wrong. Too much light for a sleeping village. Too much movement for people at rest. Smoke rose in columns that spoke of burning lodges and scattered belongings. They'd arrived too late. Takakota urged his horse forward, racing toward flames that painted the night sky orange and red. Behind him, Nalnish followed with the reluctance of a man approaching his own judgment. Ayana rode silent as shadow, bearing witness to consequences that stretched far beyond her own survival. The attack had come early, even earlier than Nalnish had expected. The cavalry had struck at sunset while families gathered for evening meals. Quick, brutal, efficient. But the lodges stood empty. No bodies scattered on the ground, no children crying in the darkness, just abandoned belongings and cook fires still burning. They escaped. Takakota dismounted and examined tracks in the mud. Most of them headed north into the Badlands. Nalnish sat his horse like a statue carved from granite. I did not expect them to run so quickly. Perhaps someone warned them. Who would dare? The question hung unanswered in air that tasted of smoke and rain. Takakota walked among the abandoned lodges, reading signs that told stories of hasty departure, but not panic. Organized retreat, rather than desperate flight. Your war chief suspected something. Ayana's voice carried across the empty camp. She stood beside a lodge that had been carefully dismantled rather than abandoned. Personal belongings removed, sacred objects taken. The kind of preparation that required advanced warning. Impossible. But the evidence surrounded them. Their people had known danger was coming, known it and responded with the kind of coordinated action that saved lives even as it sacrificed everything else. A figure emerged from the darkness beyond the camp. Old woman singing, the tribe's eldest member and keeper of sacred knowledge. She approached them with the steady gait of someone who'd outlived fear. Grandmother. Takakota stepped forward. I thought you had fled with the others. Someone must stay to speak the words that need speaking. She looked directly at Nalnish. The spirits told me you would come. The spirits? The spirits of children who died in chains. They whisper your name when the wind carries certain scents. Nalnish dismounted slowly. His hand remained on his weapon, but his shoulders sagged like a man finally setting down a burden too heavy to carry. You know. I know many things, including why you thought betrayal might save us. Old woman singing walked to where the central fire still burned. She added wood from a carefully maintained pile, coaxing flames higher against the darkness. The young woman carries something that belongs here. Ayana approached the fire and removed Kia's medicine pouch from around her neck. The beadwork caught firelight like captured stars. He asked me to bring it home. Old woman singing accepted the pouch with reverent hands. A promise kept. A debt paid to the dead. She looked at Ayana with eyes that had seen 8 decades of change and loss. You have earned a place among us if you choose to take it. And if I choose to leave? Then you leave with our blessing and our respect. Takakota watched Ayana's face in the firelight. Saw her weigh options that would define the rest of her life. Stay with people who'd accepted her sacrifice, or continue north toward an uncertain future among strangers. I choose to leave. The words hit him harder than expected. During their journey, he'd begun to hope she might find home among his people. Begun to imagine a future where her knowledge and courage could help them navigate the changing world. The Cherokee lands offer safety. The Cherokee lands offer possibility. She looked at him across the flames. That is all anyone can ask for. Old woman singing placed the medicine pouch in the fire. The leather burned slowly, releasing sweet smoke that carried prayers toward stars that had witnessed countless such ceremonies. Go then, with the protection of those who honor their promises. Ayana mounted her horse and rode toward the north. Takakota watched until darkness swallowed her completely. She'd taught him that freedom wasn't about finding where you belonged, but about choosing where you stood. Nalnish knelt beside the fire. What happens now? Now you choose whether to follow your people into exile or remain to face the consequences of your choices. The fire settled lower as dawn approached. Takakota looked at his brother and saw a man broken by the weight of impossible decisions. Choices made in fear rather than courage. Betrayals born of love rather than hatred. The cavalry will return. Yes, and our people will survive as they always have, by adapting to what cannot be changed and protecting what must be preserved. Old woman singing stood and walked toward the darkness beyond the camp. Before she disappeared, she spoke once more. The medicine pouch stays buried with Kia in the sacred cave, its promise kept, its burden lifted, its truth known only to the wind. Takakota stood alone beside the dying fire, watching dawn paint the eastern sky in shades of red and gold. His brother had vanished into the darkness, choosing exile over judgment. His people had scattered to the winds, choosing survival over honor. And Ayana rode north toward a future she'd carved from the wreckage of her past. Sometimes the greatest act of courage was deciding which laws were worth breaking. Sometimes freedom meant choosing your own path even when every road led through fire. And sometimes honor demanded that you stand alone in the ruins of everything you'd believed, holding fast to the truth that some promises must be kept no matter the cost. The canyon held its breath one last time, waiting for the world to change again. If you made it this far, you've witnessed a story of impossible choices, desperate betrayals, and the thin line between honor and survival. Drop a comment below, telling me which character's decision you would have made differently. Would you have trusted Ayana? Would you have warned the village? Would you have followed Nalnish into the darkness? Let me know in the comments, and if this story kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow brings another tale from the frontier where mercy was a forgotten word, and every choice carved pieces from your soul. See you then.